Have you ever noticed something? A thing that has been hiding in your life that comes into close contact with you every single day, yet you rarely ever take a real look at it. It's not your savings, and it's not your job. It's your spoon. You'll take pictures of latte art, and you take pictures of an overcooked steak, but you've probably never taken a single picture of your spoon. Most of the time, you don't even think about them, but the day they're gone, the entire office has no idea what to do. Today, we're going to tell the story of that employee. Actually, no, it's the story of this spoon. An old employee who has been undercover for 7,000 years. Why has he always had a place at the Chinese dining table? To answer that question, we have to go back several thousand years and see what was actually on the Chinese dinner table back then. Back then, people didn't even have proper dining tables, let alone a real kitchen. There was just a pot bubbling away with steam rising from it. And inside that pot was a mushy kind of food. It wasn't quite porridge and it wasn't quite rice. In today's terms, it was more like a thick soup. Why was it like that? Because there wasn't much choice. There were no woks, no steamers, and in a time when firewood was limited, the easiest and most practical solution was to dump some grain into a pot of water and boil it until it fell apart. That wasn't cooking. That was simply it's cooked. So when you're staring at a pot of 99.9-degree bubbling lava, how are you supposed to eat it? Grab it with your hands? Pick it up with sticks? No, neither works. And then someone picked up a seashell from the ground. They dipped it into the pot, and just like that, one of humanity's most reliable ways of eating was born. So it wasn't that the spoon came first and then the porridge. It was the pot of scalding porridge that forced the spoon into existence. So the source code of Chinese dining utensils was never, what do we want to use? It was, what can we possibly use to scoop this scorching hot stuff out of the pot? You're probably wondering, if the spoon has been around for so long, why is it that when people think of Chinese utensils today, chopsticks are the first thing that comes to mind? Believe it or not, for a very long time, chopsticks were like a new employee who never got a chance to prove themselves. It's not that chopsticks weren't good enough, the food wasn't right for them. Back then, what ordinary people ate every day wasn't kung pao chicken, and it wasn't sirloin steak. It was porridge, it was thick soups, it was all kinds of steaming hot foods, so soft and soupy that you could drink them straight from the bowl. Try using chopsticks to pick up a bowl of millet porridge. That's like asking an Olympic sprinter to compete in synchronized swimming. It's simply not what it's built for. But the spoon was a different story. One scoop and it's full. And the best part, it had a secret ultimate skill, scraping the bottom of the pot, getting that very last bite completely clean from the bottom. Back then, that wasn't being frugal, it was a survival skill. So, during the first few thousand years of Chinese civilization, it wasn't a chopstick civilization at all. It was the age of absolute spoon domination. Because the food back then was basically a pot full of things you could drink. The form of the food determined the status of the utensil. That's really all there was to it. So then, how did chopsticks make their comeback? It's not that chopsticks got better, it's that the stuff in the pot changed. About 1,000 years ago, cities were getting bigger, populations were growing, and the firewood was getting as expensive as limited edition sneakers. People started thinking about one thing. How do we use less firewood and cook food faster? So, meat was sliced thin. Vegetables were cut into smaller pieces. Throw them into a pan, stir them a few times, and they're done. And that's when a new cooking method appeared, stir-frying. And right at that moment, that new employee who had never really gotten a chance to prove themselves finally got their opportunity. When it came to slices of meat, shredded vegetables, and noodles, those two thin sticks turned out to be surprisingly effective. Little by little, more and more people began to realize that there seemed to be no tool more convenient than them. As for the spoon, its glory days were coming to an end. It was like an old craftsman who got kicked out of the steam age and thrown into the electrical age. It's not that it lacked skill. The rules of the entire game had changed. From simmering to stir-frying, from large chunks to small pieces, from drinking to chewing. Chopsticks were made for this new kind of kitchen. The spoon belonged to the previous one. What it was facing was an ordinary workplace competition. It was a layoff notice on the scale of an entire civilization. If this trend continued, the spoon wouldn't just lose a job, it would lose an entire era. And before long, it looked like it was about to be swept straight into the trash bin of history. Just when everyone thought the spoon was about to lose its job, the spoon smiled. It had discovered a shocking secret, a fatal weakness that even chopsticks themselves didn't know they had. What do chopsticks fear most? Water. More specifically, anything that comes with water. Ask it to pick up a piece of braised pork, no problem. But ask it to deal with a bowl of porridge, it crashes on the spot. What about the spoon? This might be exactly what it was born to do. A bowl of tofu soup. That last sip of noodle broth after the noodles are gone, none of it works without the spoon. This was the spoon's final trump card. As long as you humans keep drinking soup, I will always have a job. It's not that the spoon won over soup, it's that soup for 7,000 years has never left the Chinese pot. Which brings us to another question. Why is there always some water in the Chinese pot? The ultimate answer isn't hidden in the spoon. It's written into every one of our bodies. In ancient China, many people would rather pay for a bowl of hot water than drink untreated water straight from a river. Why? Because people knew that untreated water could make you sick. And back then, getting sick like that could kill you. So Chinese people developed the habit very early on. Boil the water before you drink it. But then things got interesting. If the pot is already sitting on the fire and the water is already boiling, why not throw something into it? And so the story changed. Throw in some rice and it becomes porridge. Throw in some vegetables and it becomes soup. Throw in some bone and it becomes a huge pot of broth. Over time, people realized that the pot didn't just make water safer, it was also a food multiplier. The most powerful thing about the pot wasn't that it cooked food, it was that it could turn one portion of food into dinner for more people. In times of hunger, that's exactly what people did. And so Chinese kitchens slowly developed a peculiar logic. If water could be added, add water. If something could be boiled, boil it. Because every extra bowl might mean feeding one more person. And that's when the spoon finally realized that it had misunderstood something. For all those years, it thought its job was serving soup. and it thought its rival was chopsticks. But the thing that truly needed it was never the soup, it was the pot. Over 7,000 years, the wok arrived, the steamer arrived, all kinds of new cooking methods arrived, but that pot filled with water never went away. And as long as that pot remains, the spoon will never be out of work. The spoon never defeated the chopsticks. In fact, it never defeated anyone at all. It simply stayed by that pot's side. For 7,000 years, the food has changed. The people have changed. The dining table has become richer and more abundant. What hasn't changed is the habit of putting food into water, slowly bringing it to a boil, and then serving it at the table. So today, when you pick up a spoon, you are not picking up a utensil. You're picking up a way of survival that has lasted for 7,000 years.